An unemployed man and his cult leader uncle join forces for a perilous mission involving a valuable shipment, which sets off a tense confrontation with a dangerous group who seek world domination. While on board a commercial plane, hijackers Asif and Nabi found themselves engaged in a debate concerning the number of maidens they would receive as a reward for carrying out a deadly attack, as they had been promised varying quantities. Seeking clarification on the actual number of maidens, Asif placed a call to their leader Osama or Sammy. Disappointingly, Sammy revealed that he couldn't guarantee more than 20 maidens, disappointing the hijackers. Discouraged, the hijackers made a firm decision to sever ties with their leader and alter their course, heading towards the Bahamas with the ultimate intention of completely abandoning their mission. However, the enraged passengers managed to breach the cockpit to gain control of the aircraft. In a tragic turn of events, their efforts unintentionally led the plane to collide with the North Tower of the World Trade Center. 5 years later, inside a trailer park nestled in Paradise, Arizona, Postal Dude is engrossed in his preparations for a crucial interview, idly flicking through TV channels. Suddenly, he stumbles upon a segment featuring a man discussing the latest toy sensation sweeping the nation, the wildly popular crotchy dolls. However, his wife, bothered by the blaring television noise, demands that he promptly shut it off so she can watch TV peacefully in her room. When his wife mentions his Uncle Dave, Postal Dude accidentally chokes on his milk. Stepping out of his house, Postal Dude scolds his dog Champ for defecating in their yard, reminding his pet that he can only do that in the neighbor's yard. Suddenly, a neighbor makes his way towards Postal Dude, highlighting the violation caused by Champ's mess in their yard. Furthermore, he addresses another transgression from the previous day, the disturbance caused by their passionate lovemaking. However, Postal Dude vehemently denies his presence alongside his wife the preceding day, but it dawns on him that his wife has been unfaithful, causing him to further hate his town. Meanwhile, Eugene Wells, a mayoral candidate, takes charge by setting up his own stage in front of Habib Lucky Ganesh, capturing the crowd's attention. Seizing the moment, he boldly declares his commitment to steering America in a new and promising direction. Within the confines of Habib Lucky Ganesh, the vigilant store owner named Habib confronts a customer for indulging in an extended reading session. Subsequently, he discreetly makes his way towards a back door, revealing that his store doubles as the hideout for a terrorist group under the leadership of Mohammed. The group won't be staying long because Mohammed discloses that a highly valuable shipment, which contains the crotchy dolls, is scheduled to arrive the following day. Meanwhile, Postal Dude arrives at Glutco Inc. for his interview, where he meets Mr. Blither, the formidable boss of the company. As the nervous interviewee gazes upon the shocking sights of severed heads prominently displayed, the boss humorously remarks that he had to climb over those people to reach his current position, playfully indicating their significance. However, the boss quickly reveals that the heads are papier-mâché and meant to be harmless props. As Postal Dude takes a seat, he discovers that the chair is broken, but the indifferent boss shows no concern for the inconvenience. As the recorded interview commences, the lady conducting the recording begins asking questions. Postal Dude, however, finds it frustrating when she abruptly corrects him after each response. Eventually, the mounting pressure and constant criticism trigger an outburst from Postal Dude. Surprisingly, Postal Dude's outburst leaves Mr. Blither impressed, recognizing his tenacity and passion. In a moment of congratulations, the boss reveals that Postal Dude is now a top contender for the position. Just before Postal Dude prepares to depart, Mr. Blither makes an unusual request, asking him to join the employees in singing the company's fight song. In the apocalyptic survival compound, Richard gathers a crowd of hippie trainees. He proceeds to introduce the Doomsday leader, Uncle Dave, who's actually a con artist. As a part of his act, Uncle Dave commends all the participants for successfully completing the training program and for relinquishing their attachment to the American dream, embracing the new reality of survival. Subsequently, Richard enters the leader's room, only to discover Uncle Dave sleeping alongside the trainees as part of an unsettling initiation ritual. Once the female trainees exit the room, Richard musters the courage to inform Uncle Dave that the Internal Revenue Service has uncovered their failure to pay taxes for 3 consecutive years, resulting in a staggering debt of $1.3 million and 79 cents. Overwhelmed by the distressing news, Uncle Dave requests that Richard leave him alone to process the situation. After Richard leaves, the frustrated Doomsday leader sees a man on television talking about how the supply of crotchy dolls can't meet the demand, inspiring him to think of a plan to pay his debt. Meanwhile, Officer Greg and Officer John find themselves trapped behind an elderly driver who unfortunately has forgotten her glasses. Frustratingly, she remains stationary at a green traffic light, causing a delay in their journey. As Greg exits his vehicle to approach the elderly lady, she attempts to explain the situation in a foreign language. However, due to a miscommunication, Greg mistakenly perceives her words as an insult, leading him to impulsively shoot her. At Grind Zero, Postal Dude notices Faith, the barista, entertaining an Arab man and two blonde women. He then orders 2 lattes with no foam for Uncle Dave and himself. In a tower in his compound, Uncle Dave asks for Postal Dude's help in devising a plan to get him out of his tricky financial situation. However, Postal Dude initially declines his uncle's request, defending that he's now a changed man and doesn't want to join Uncle Dave in his illegal activities because he couldn't get a job due to his arrest records. Hearing this, Uncle Dave respects Postal Dude's decision but tells him to return if he changes his mind, before giving him a souvenir ashtray. Subsequently, Postal Dude finds himself at the welfare office, where chaos unexpectedly erupts when a disgruntled customer is unable to receive his welfare check. In the midst of the ensuing shootout, Postal Dude cautiously approaches the fallen customers and checks their tickets one by one, managing to find the closest number to be served. Unfortunately, just as his turn is about to come up, the clerk abruptly closes her station, leaving Postal Dude frustrated. Upon returning home, Postal Dude is confronted with a heartbreaking sight: his wife engaging in infidelity with his neighbor. Overwhelmed with betrayal, Postal Dude seizes his marriage portrait and swiftly departs from the house. Then he goes into a phone booth and calls his Uncle Dave, desperately seeking financial assistance that'll enable him to leave town. However, to Postal Dude's surprise, a beggar intervenes in their conversation, wielding a gun and threatening him. To defend himself, Postal Dude reacts swiftly, using the weapon against the beggar. Then he cautiously retrieves the phone and reluctantly agrees to be a part of Uncle Dave's plan, realizing that it may be his only way out. Meanwhile, Sammy tapes his threatening message to the American people. Suddenly, Mohammed, the director, cuts the scene and informs Sammy about the shipment of crotchy dolls, emphasizing that their plan this time won't involve their people's debts. In the center, Uncle Dave tasks Postal Dude with devising a flawless plan to steal 2,000 crotchy dolls so they can sell them for $4,000 each and earn a lot of money. When Uncle Dave suggests getting a truck that won't trace back to them, Postal Dude suddenly gets an idea. Meanwhile, Eugene Wells is still campaigning in front of Habib's store, which threatens Mohammed, causing him to come up with a plan to get rid of the mayoral candidate. When Postal Dude arrives in the store to purchase an automobile re-entry device, a man with explosives attached to his body comes out of the hideout and proceeds to hug Eugene to blow them both up. Afterward, Postal Dude walks to a parking lot where he spots Harry, a disabled man. To get over the fence, he moves Harry and uses him as a makeshift ladder to climb over, enabling him to unlock the mail delivery truck's door. Suddenly, Officer Greg arrives on the scene to pick Harry up. It turns out that the cop witnessed what happened to Harry, who suffered injuries in a cycling accident and hit his dog. However, instead of bringing him to the hospital, Greg took the man home and decided to use him to generate income by panhandling. The cop plans to bring him to the Crotchy Doll media event that'll take place in Little Germany. Meanwhile, Postal Dude assembles Uncle Dave, Richard, and the women to brief them on the plan. He outlines their strategy to create diversions to bypass security, while Postal Dude and Dave search for the boxes to be loaded onto a mail truck positioned at the entrance. Unknown to Postal Dude and his team, Mohammed and Sammy are also in the process of finalizing their own attack to seize the same shipment, which they intend to use to spread avian flu. Suddenly, Sammy receives a call from George W. Bush, who turns out to be his friend. Meanwhile, actor Vern Troyer, who's expected to make an appearance at the Crotchy Doll media event, is dropped off with his luggage bag 8 miles away from the venue. In the compound, Postal Dude prepares his team by making them wear mustaches and symbolic armbands. Meanwhile, the terrorist group prepares their weapons and drives off in an SUV. In Little Germany, the media event for the Crotchy Dolls has officially started. On stage, a TV show host named Bob interviews Uwe Boll, movie director and park owner. As he announces that the anticipated dolls will be on sale, the crowd cheers. Nearby, Fate serves Officer Greg and Officer John, who confronts his fellow cops' exploitative intentions towards Harry. But Officer Greg only justifies his act and pushes Harry to work. Later, Postal Dude, Uncle Dave, Richard, and the women arrive in Little Germany to execute their plan. As Richard mans the mail truck near the entrance, the rest of the team goes inside. To distract the security guards, Dave orders the women to show off their bodies. Once the security guards are gone, Uncle Dave and Postal Dude finally enter the room where the boxes of crotchy dolls are. Meanwhile, Vern Troyer finally arrives in a pickup truck. As the star walks down the red carpet, Richard quickly signals Postal Dude and Uncle Dave. Shortly after, the cult ladies arrive, and they get started carrying the boxes to the mail truck. However, the terrorists suddenly infiltrate the festival and catch them transporting the boxes, prompting Postal Dude and Uncle Dave to distract them. Meanwhile, Sammy calls to inform them about the mail truck with the crotchy doll boxes. Just as Vern introduces the crotchy doll, the crotchy mascot reveals himself to be Vince Desi, the creator of the Postal video game. He suddenly attacks Uwe Ball for ruining his game with his movie, leading to a brawl on stage. When Vince is about to shoot Uwe, Postal Dude intervenes, accidentally shooting Harry. Just then, the cops and the terrorists join the shootout, resulting in the deaths of Uwe, Vince, and many children. Amidst the chaos, Richard manages to trap Vern by locking him inside his own suitcase. He swiftly transports the suitcase to the mail truck and escapes with Postal Dude, Dave, and the ladies. However, Greg and John witness their escape and chase after them. Along the way, Postal Dude intentionally runs over the welfare office clerk who closed on him, which distracts the cops. When Postal Dude's team arrives at the compound, they are surprised to see the terrorists already there. When Richard suggests that they hide in the underground bunker in the main compound, Postal Dude asserts that he'll take care of the mail truck with the doll boxes. After parking the mail truck on the road, Postal Dude gets out of the vehicle, joins the crowd, and listens as police officers Greg and John paint him as responsible for all the tragic incidents that happened in town. However, the man beside Postal Dude recognizes him as the assailant, inciting everyone to chase him down. As Postal Dude runs, he hides in Habib's store and then manages to escape, only to encounter a cop after he exits the back door. After knocking the cop down, he wears his clothes and disguises himself as the officer, enabling him to trick the mob hunting for him. After misleading his pursuers and dropping off the boxes, Postal Dude returns to the compound and manages to quietly sneak in to shoot the terrorists in the bedroom. Afterward, he calls his team to get inside the underground shelter, where he discovers a stash of weapons. However, contrary to the initial plan of stealing the crotchy dolls to assist Uncle Dave with his IRS debts, Richard unexpectedly reveals that it was never part of the plan. He advocates fulfilling the prophecy in Dave's fake Bible and using the weapons to bring about the end of the world. Later, Richard reveals the terrorists' devious plan to the team, which he discovered through one of the cult members who slept with the terrorists, explaining why Postal Dude saw them at the coffee shop the previous day. Because of this, Richard revises the plan and wants to spread the flu not only in the United States but all over the world, to fulfill the apocalyptic prophecy written in Dave's phony Bible. When Postal Dude starts to object, a cult member intervenes. Shortly after, as Richie reads Dave's Bible, he finally reveals that he abducted Vern because the Bible mentions a tiny entertainer who'll be taken advantage of by 1,000 monkeys. Hearing this, Vern attacks Uncle Dave, prompting Richard to order the cult member to take the tiny entertainer inside a vault room full of monkeys to finally fulfill the prophecy. Meanwhile, after discussing their bird flu plan, Mohammed calls for a martyr who'll be left in the compound. Because of another terrorist's suggestion, he ends up assigning Abdul. In the underground shelter, Richard, who insists that the Bible wants to get rid of Uncle Dave, shoots the Doomsday leader to his demise. Afterward, he confines Postal Dude in a cell, even when he says that he's the only person who knows where the truck filled with bird flu is. Unbeknownst to Richard, Postal Dude is able to sneak an explosive inside the cell. He then sticks the explosive on the door and uses the wires to activate it, finally breaking the door down. However, when Postal Dude gets out, Richard is already out looking for the truck. He then grabs weapons and invites the cult members to eliminate the terrorists upstairs. Moments later, Postal Dude returns to Paradise, where the crowd looking for him finally spots him. However, he manages to eliminate them all using his machine gun. Suddenly, Faith appears and holds him at gunpoint, but he manages to get her on his side when he convinces her that he needs to destroy the mail truck filled with flu-filled dolls before Richard or the terrorist group gets them. Meanwhile, Sammy, who attended a seminar about dominating his employees, is about to pay for his book, but his card gets declined. Suddenly, Mohammed arrives to pick him up. Meanwhile, Sammy discusses his seminar learnings with the group in the car. When they arrive in the trailer park, Postal Dude's wife is sleeping with the two officers. He then puts an explosive near their house and looks for his dog Champ, so he can escape the town with him. However, a grand shootout ensues in the trailer park when the cops, cult members, and terrorists spot Postal Dude and Faith, who hide behind a vehicle. In an attempt to get everyone's attention, Postal Dude reveals himself holding a trigger and lectures everyone to love each other and find some common ground to drop their end-of-the-world plans. Despite Postal Dude's attempt to reason with the fanatics, they remain unswayed and resume shooting at him. Thinking swiftly, Postal Dude retrieves his machine gun from the truck. As their hiding spot is obliterated, Postal Dude and Faith find themselves with no alternative but to engage in a firefight, shooting back at the attackers in self-defense. After disengaging from the shootout, Sammy separates himself from the chaos and locates a phone booth. He contacts George requesting a helicopter to extract him from the scene. Meanwhile, the IRS agents arrive at the compound looking for Uncle Dave. In an attempt to get rid of the agents, Abdul hugs them, only for him to realize that he forgot to wear his explosive belt because it was with Mohammed. Afterward, Postal Dude and Faith steal a police car, but Richard manages to jump onto the vehicle's hood and shoot the escapees. Luckily, Richard runs out of ammunition, prompting Postal Dude to retrieve his pistol and finish off the Doomsday fanatic. As they drive off to finally leave town, Postal Dude and Faith realize that his dog Champ has been in the back seat all along. As they tune into the radio for updates, the couple hears George placing the blame for the day's shootouts and explosions on China and India. Furthermore, he claims that he's been compelled to utilize extreme nuclear force to obliterate both countries in response. The United States responds to the perceived threat by launching 30 nuclear missiles at both China and India. Unfortunately, China and India reciprocate by launching 30 nuclear missiles each toward the United States. Amidst the unfolding global crisis, Postal Dude decides to detonate the explosives. The resulting explosion engulfs the trailer park, leading to the tragic demise of his wife and her lovers. Later, Bush and Sammy hold hands and skip through an open field, forming an unlikely bond. Meanwhile, missiles detonate, casting a menacing mushroom cloud in the distance.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.